Hi all, and thank you for attending today's webinar on Achieving Net Zero, Simplifying Embodied Carbon Calculations in Autodesk Revit. Today's team consists of myself, Tom Rudge, Go-to-Market Lead, Paul Grimston, Principal Consultant, and Samuel Boswell, LCA Consultant. As a brief overview of today's agenda, I've just put that up now. If you have any questions throughout this webinar, please put it in the text box and we will get to that when we get to the wrap-up section towards the end. So just a bit about Symmetry for the people who are new here today. So Symmetry is across 7 different countries, 1,000 employees, 600 of them being consultants, and also 100 developers. In terms of what we do, primarily focused on the AEC and manufacturing industry, working with the likes of end clients, designers, contractors, and manufacturers, providing solutions and services, anything from training, support, right the way to project delivery. Areas of assistance involve the likes of implementation and adoption of new technology, project support, digital transformation across projects and companies, and also application development to help our customers to work smarter. In terms of the technology offering, across the top, you can see own tech solutions that are developed in-house, and across the bottom are all the partners that Symmetry are partnered up with. This includes the likes of Autodesk, Dell, Celebri, etc. So the main reason why we're here today, so let's have a look at Symmetry's decarbonisation mission. So here is a statement, and if you revert back to the slide I've just shown with all the different solutions and partners that Symmetry are involved with, there's a large offering here and a large focus on providing leading edge technology offerings and expertise throughout the consultants. And a main focus of this is, of course, decarbonisation and making a positive impact within the market towards sustainability. But why are we doing this? What is the reason for all of this? So as we'll all be aligned on this webinar today together, we're facing major challenges with the likes of climate change, heat waves, ecosystems, food security, and biodiversity. We need to take action. There needs to be work done in order to improve this, and we need to do it now. So in terms of looking at first steps, sustainability in construction, there's some key figures here. For me personally, that second point from the top, that 50% of all global material consumption comes from the construction industry. And that second point down, 39% of all carbon emissions come from the construction industry, shows that action needs to be taken now. And it is down to all of us here on this webinar to take accountability and to make changes throughout our companies and on our projects that we work on. So how can Symmetry help you towards a net zero and carbon neutral future? And at this point, I would like to pass over to Samuel Boswell, who's going to give you an overview of life cycle assessment and what exactly this is.
Thank you, Tom. So for those of you who are new to LCA, the sort of initial statement I can say about it is life cycle assessment is a systematic methodology used to evaluate the environmental impacts of a product, service, or process over its whole lifespan. So of course, these days we generally talk about carbon, and of course, a lot of us are here to focus on reducing embodied carbon, but an LCA does in fact take into account other forms of pollution. So these are called impact categories when you're doing them in the realms of an LCA. And so this covers off things like acidification, eutrophication, ozone depletion, and so on. So there's quite a few different things that an LCA can focus on, but it will be looking at every aspect of building product or service, well, whatever it may be. So LCA is a very standardized process. There's a number of ISO and EN standards out there that explain how it should be done or how it is supposed to be done. And so the most base level one of these is ISO 14040. And this outlines how any form of LCA, regardless of what it's being done for, should be the way in which it should be performed. But in regards to a building LCA, you would be following EN 15978. And so there's a number of different green building certifications, regulations, or guidances out there. These are all generally derivatives of this EN 15978 standard. And so it means that there's a unification in what aspects of the life cycle stages you analyze. And so we can see here at the top, you have a diagram showing what these are. So there's A1 to A3. This is the product stage. So the products that actually go into the building, which can consist of the impacts coming from extraction of raw materials, transport to manufacturing site, and then the manufacturing process. You then have A4 to A5. So this is the construction stage of the product or project that you're working on. You then have the maintenance or the use stage. And so this can cover off operational energy, maintenance, repair, and so on. And then, of course, the end of life process. So what happens with the products or building materials that you've used at the end of the building's life. And then there is, on top of that, stage D, and this covers any benefits beyond the system boundary. So any kind of recovery, maybe from incineration of materials and energy gained from that. So an LCA, while it's been outlined for a whole lifespan of a project, it's flexible and it's a tool that you can use. So it's described as a decision-making tool. So it won't provide you with the solution, but it'll show you what things need solving and what things need improving. And so you can do different lifespans. So you could do an A1 to A3 impact. So this is a cradle to gate. You could also do A1 to A5. This is called cradle to practical completion, also known as upfront carbon. You then have cradle to grave. So this just covers all of the stages up until the end of life. And then if you were to look at the cradle to cradle, which is the whole lifespan, that would be A1 to D. So Symmetry provide a number of tools for this. You have Naviate Zero, which is very good for the early stage analysis. And then for the later stage, kind of full lifespan reporting, there is One-Click LCA. And so at this point, I will then pass over to Paul Grimston to run through the Naviate Zero plugin.
Thanks, Sam. We're not going to go through any slides. We're just going to go straight into Revit, as you can see, and we'll start to look through Naviate Zero. As Sam mentioned, this is really for stages A1 to A3. Symmetry, we've created this to help designers see the impact of their material choices as they're designing the building. So it can feed into the full LCA, as we'll see a little bit later on. But really, we're just dealing with the actual materials that are going into the project at the moment. So Naviate Zero is one of a number of our Naviate products here. So looking across my ribbon at the top, Naviate Zero is its own tab here. And you'll be pleased to see that there's not 100 buttons on it. There's only sort of 4 or 5. So it's actually a pretty simple tool to use. And we think this is quite important because we want it to become part of an everyday workflow. So the model that we have is just an existing model. It's one that's been around for quite some time. First steps we need to do to start looking at or working out the embodied carbon is just to go into the settings. And this just allows us to locate the project. So first, I've got this set for the UK, but we can obviously choose any country we like. And this, when we're searching for materials from the EPD database, this restricts it to this country. So we can make changes to this a little bit later on. We can also control phasing. So if we got certain phases within our Revit model that we don't want calculated, we can just uncheck those. That's nice and easy to do. And then the big list in the middle here is just determining exactly which categories in Revit we're actually going to perform the calculation on. So it may be that there are certain things you have in the model that you don't want calculated, and therefore we can just uncheck those categories en masse. And equally, it's also setting the default units we're going to use for the calculation. So things like curtain wall mullions, we've got set to length down here. If we're including furniture, it's probably going to be calculated in pieces rather than area or volume or anything like that. And yeah, we can go along and just sort of set these settings up as we need them for our project. Just a little note, if we've got the ability to import and export the settings, so if we set this up in one file, we can obviously export it out and import it into other models and save going through this every single time. But once we've done that, what we actually need to do is actually apply the resources to the objects in the model. So clicking on apply resources, it will scan through the model, and once it pops up, it's going to list out all of the families that have been placed in the actual project itself. So looking down the left-hand side of this box here, it's quite a big box. It can be moved onto separate screens, it's not a problem. But essentially on the left-hand side, we've got all of the families that have been placed in the model. Okay. On the right-hand side are all of the EPD data. So this is all of the filtered to the UK, but this is coming through from the one-click LCA database of materials. So we've licensed access to this, and this is now sort of live used inside of Naviate Zero. So what we're looking at on the right-hand side are all of the manufacturers and generic EPDs that have been published, and one-click LCA generally aggregates these from pretty much all around the world. So it's fairly certain, I'm confident in saying that it's actually the largest database we've got access to in the world. So this really makes Naviate Zero a very powerful tool by having access into that one-click LCA database of materials. So essentially what we need to do is find the objects that we need to apply resources to. So as you can see, I've done quite a bit in this model already for the demonstration, but as we scroll down through the categories here, we'll get towards the walls at the bottom. And we can see all of the wall families are listed out here. So the ones that I've used in the model are listed. And we've got two ways of doing this. We can either apply a resource to the entire wall. So if there's a specific EPD that works for the entire wall build-up, then we can apply it at that top level. Or alternatively, we can expand it out and we can see the individual layers within the wall so that we can then find EPDs for the specific materials and apply those. Now, the way we need to do this is select the layer, the material that we want to apply an EPD to. And now we just need to filter out the list. So we've actually got a lot in here, and we've got the search at the top. So there's lots of ways of doing this. You can just search for the material. You know, we can just start to type in something like plaster, and we'll start to see it filter out to different plasterboards and things. You know, getting the right name, if it's gypsum or something like that, we can search and it will filter that out. Or equally, we could search for manufacturers. So, you know, just gyprock or something like that, and it'll filter it out to specific manufacturers. So you do need to have a bit of an idea of what you're looking for. But essentially, we're just going to go and search for that and find it within the list here and filter it out. So once we've got it, we can see that we've got a few of these. You can sort of hover over and it will expand the tooltip out so you can get a little bit of an idea of what they are. Equally, we've got the button just here, which opens up the actual EPD data of that individual material. So we can then read the detail, see exactly where it's come from, look at the dates and things. And if we're confident that that's the one we want to use, then we can just hit the apply button and it will apply it onto the resource over here. But a few other things, we've got the color code in here, which allows us or shows us how green it is in sort of stakes. This is kind of the second level. There'll be a darker green, which is a little bit better than this. And we've also got a compare option. So if we're not sure, we can select up to 5 of these and then just hit the compare button. And it'll open up a separate window for us. And then we can see all of those lined up. And actually the one on the left-hand side will be the material with the least global warming potential. So that's the best material to apply in terms of global warming potential. But it'll get slightly worse as it goes towards the right-hand side. But obviously we can now read through these. We can see the published dates. So obviously there's one there that's quite old, so we probably need to ignore that one. And looking through, if we decide that we want to use one of these, we can just hit the apply and close button. And then that will apply that resource onto this layer within this wall type just here. So we'll just uncheck these. So a few little bits, if there's one of these that we want to use, so actually if that's the one we want to use, we can pin it as well. And then that way when we clear the filter out, we'll see it staying at the top of the list of materials so we can get back to it nice and easily. But essentially we need to just work our way through. So again, I can go for the next layer just here, and if we just again know what we're looking for, then coming down here towards the bottom, I can see that we've got some metal framing components here for plasterboard walls. And again, we can sort of click on and have a look at these. And if we use that one, we just hit apply. Make sure we get the right one. Sorry, I'm going to change the units. That's what I'm going to do. So yeah, if I change this to volume for the stud work, so area for the plasterboard, but volume for the stud work. I guess this is just showing how we can override the settings individually if we need to. So the default unit we had set to area, we can override it per layer, per component as well. And then we can apply that, and that will go through and work. Now, one of the things that we want to be able to do, so something like a stud wall, obviously it's not 100% stud work in there, it's not solid metal. So we do have a percentage value just here where we can reduce that down. So stud work might be something like 3%. So actually we can take just 3% of the volume and then apply it. Sorry, clicked in a slightly wrong place. There we go, 3% of the volume. And then it will give us a much more accurate calculation. So again, we may need to do some little bit of research to get the exact values that we should be using. The other thing we can also do is we can duplicate these layers as well. So we can clone this, and then we can maybe set this down to 95, 97, something like that. And maybe between the studs, we need to apply some insulation, and therefore we can now start to go through and look for some insulation. And here we can see the insulation. We've got different sort of values here. So I'm going to open up the filters for this part. So when we're faced with a long list of materials, then we can start to filter out some of the different material as we want them. So, you know, if we want to make sure we're not seeing the very high CO2 ones in the list, we can just choose a couple of these here so that we're just seeing the best ones that we can. We can also, you know, knowing that we're looking for volume, we can also come and filter the units so that we're only seeing ones that will work with volumes. And then we can also filter out if we're looking for generic materials or specific manufacturers or private ones, etc. So if we say generic there, then we can start to use, if we don't know which manufacturer it's going to be, we could start to use some of these and apply those in as well. Ooh, I need to check the box. So the process that we need to go through is really working through all of the families within the project, finding the right EPD data, and then associating that to the families. We've got a number of tools to help us with this. So obviously we can search. So if we're looking for a specific family, we can just start to go and type those things in. So as we sort of type in here, it will start to sort of filter out so we can sort of find things quickly. We've got some filters on here as well that allow us to look for specific categories or even specific families as well. We can also organize it. So rather than doing it by category and family, we can organize it by material. And then if we go and search for, say, the plaster again, then we can kind of just see the materials within the families here and that are using that plasterboard material. This then gives us the option to be able to start to copy and paste the resources between layers as well. So it kind of makes it a bit quicker and a bit easier for us. So we'll clear that one out. We'll swap it back to category. And we've also got some options here that allow us to, once we've assigned a resource, to take it out of the list so that we can see the ones that don't have resources. And these are the ones we need to work with. So we need to go through and apply this. Again, it could be quite time consuming. So this is something that you could do in a template. But equally, we've now got the options to export and import the resource mapping as well. So again, once you've been through one project, you can import this into the next project and then obviously make changes as we need to. But once we've been through this, I'll close this down. And essentially now we just need to run through and do the calculation. So we'll click on the calculation here, and it's actually calculating it as it goes. So it's doesn't take too long, but obviously it's got to scan through the model and actually perform that calculation. And it brings it up in the form of a pie chart initially. So looking at that, we can see the total tonnage of CO2 emissions there. And then we can see the breakdown to the different categories. And actually the model's still interactive, so it's not frozen out. We can still swap between views. And what we'll see then is as we click on different things in here, so if we pick on the walls, they actually get selected. If we grab the mullions, we can see that they're being selected. We can see exactly what's actually being used to perform this calculation and what's actually contributing to the values here. We also have an expanded panel. So again, once we've got that open, we get a bit more detail as to the numbers that are actually making this total over here and how it's split down between the different wall types. If it's a single material, then that will be shown here, and we'll have access into the EPD data again, so we can see that. Obviously, where the walls are made up of multiple materials, we're just getting the total for the walls at the moment. But again, we can also swap this to show it by material as well, by categories, by resources. So again, we can see the different material types that are making up the totals here. And again, this details panel is then showing those materials. So we can see exactly what's coming from each material. So having run through that, that's the calculation there. We don't need to close these windows down, obviously, because we're just seeing one screen. I tend to do that. We can leave it open. It does have a refresh button. So, you know, if you go back and you make changes, you can just hit the refresh button. But it doesn't take too long anyway, so I tend to close it down. And then looking at the objects themselves, so if we zoom in and we grab one of the objects here, let's grab one of the doors, for example, then over in the properties, we've added in the actual global warming potential of that individual object there, so that one component, and that number is actually done in kilograms of CO2. And also if I click Edit Type, then we can see the actual EPD data and the total for that type. So obviously, if I've got 10 of those in, then this is the total for all 10 of those. Okay, and that carries through to all of these things. So again, clicking onto one of these windows here, again, we can see that, and we can see all of the data inside of there. So it actually puts it into the model and banks it into the parameters. And therefore, what it also does is creates a schedule for you. So we have a global warming schedule just here, the GWP schedule. So it's all listed out across all of the components with their data. So families, types, resources, the data that it's using, and then the total in the end just here. Obviously, this is a default schedule, so we could customize this a little bit if we needed to, if we wanted to add the count in, or if we wanted to calculate it in different ways, we could do that as well. And obviously this schedule allows you then to export this data out. So, you know, if you need to run this across several models, we can export this out to Excel and then maybe build up some kind of dashboard in something like Power BI to give you totals across the project. And also when you're running different alternatives and options, then obviously you can make changes to the model, rerun it, export out the new set of results, and start to do comparisons as well. So the fact that it gets baked in is quite a nice feature in here. A few other little bits in there, so just to be aware, we can exclude individual objects. So for example, if we was using a floor for the external works and we didn't really want that, but we wanted the floors inside the building, we can exclude those individually. Or equally, if there's a type of object, we can exclude the type as well. So rather than doing it by category, we can also exclude by type and by individual objects as well. So then, having gone through all of that, obviously we can rerun that. Once we get to the point where we're potentially looking to take this further on and perform a larger lifecycle analysis in there, then we have the option to export the data out. So clicking on this will send this out to one-click LCA. So it's got a direct link to that. So in the background now, it's actually extracting the data out, and it's going to open up a web page and get us to log into one-click LCA. And to be honest, at that point, I'm going to hand you back over to Samuel, who's a bit more au fait with the one-click LCA process.
Great, thanks, Paul. Yeah, so once you've clicked the button, it's going to bring you to the import process into one-click LCA. So firstly, one-click is a web-based software, so there's nothing really to download while you're using it. And also this is the import process for all sorts of integrations. And it's just simply a chronological process. So we start off with settings, which you can see as the page here, where we choose the project that we're going to work on, or we're going to import the data into, the specific design within that project that we want to add the data to. We choose the calculation tool, although truthfully, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference which one you choose. I'll select all data so that I know that everything's being included. And then you have the option to either replace it, add to it, or just update the quantities. It's worth noting that you can actually add a completely new design if you want, but in this case, I'm going to just import to one existing. And so the next steps are very straightforward. Just to save on time, the most important one to focus on is the mapping, because this is really how the Naviate software works so efficiently. But just to clarify, the classify section is where you're choosing which classes or classification system or categories you're using from in the Revit model, and which of those apply to the categories within the one-click software, so that you know that all of your data is going into the right place. Filter, you're simply choosing what things you do and don't include. Combine, you can either, if there's the same type of material, you can either combine it into one or separate it, but also you can add other parameters possibly. And then review, you're simply going back over these other ones. So the most important is mapping. And once I've applied the settings that I'm happy with, I would click continue, and it would then bring us to this page here. So you can see it's gone through all of these steps. It's landed on mapping. We've got 40 specific points from the model that we imported. We've got a filter just here. And then below that, you've got the most important part, which is the identified data. And so the first column is showing the material name that was coming from the Naviate plugin. You've then got the class, so what part of the building it's included in. You've also got a RICS category, which is automatically filled in. You can apply a company classification if you have your own classification system. You've got the quantity, the percentage share of the building, but then more importantly, you've got the resource map. So the way it's really working with whenever you import something is you're taking the material name and you're mapping it to a one-click material or a material from the one-click database. The strength of the Naviate plugin is that it's already using the one-click database. So there is really no mapping that's required. You know, if you can look at any of these things, so carpet tiles, nylon, polyamide, and it's exactly the same material within here. So it already knows what material it should be importing, and everything here is correct. You can see that the mapping basis is telling us that it's mapped in model. And once you've done that, you simply click continue, and that will then bring you onto the results page, which is here. So you can see this is the name of the project that I was importing into. So Achieving Net Zero, Naviate Zero webinar. This is the design, so my option 1 baseline. And then this was the calculation tool. So this is the RICS Whole Life Carbon Assessment Guidance tool. It's the standard tool that you would use in the UK. So we get results with the life cycle stages across the top here, and then the total. You've got the building elements according to their RICS classification, and then the number is, of course, the respective kilograms of embodied carbon. So if I go a little bit further below that, you have a section showing the most contributing materials. So you can see which materials within the building are producing the most amount of carbon. So, for example, this raised access flooring panel is 72 tons of embodied carbon, and that's 14% of the project. So I could then show sustainable alternatives, and it will give me a list of other similar materials with similar properties that would be a more sustainable choice to go with. So it's great for improving the decarbonization of your project. And then just beyond that, we have all the ways that the data can be visualized. So for example, there's graphs showing the total embodied carbon by classification. So the floors here are very high. So maybe we want to go back to our model or duplicate this design and focus on trying to decarbonize the floors there. And then there's bubble diagrams, Sankey diagrams, tree maps, and so on. And just before we move on, there's if you are doing it for any particular green building certification or regulation, the one-click software is always going to provide you with the documentation that's required to be submitted for whatever you're trying to do, and it will be formatted in the way in which you need to submit it. So you can download a detailed report here, and then you have all the compiled information exactly in the way that you need to pass it on. And so just one quick thing before we go on in terms of results. This is what we call the project homepage. So this is actually the project here. You can see my option 1 baseline is what I imported the data to, but I do also have a couple of other designs, and we're able to compare what the impacts of these different designs are. So all the different ways that we can examine what the impacts are. So this one's the total amount of carbon. This one's the impact per life cycle stage. And then this one's showing the impact by building element. So you can really see where the hotspots are coming from. So external enclosing walls, for example, in this one are much lower than in my option 1. So that could probably be a better choice in terms of my design. So all the graphs can then be downloaded as image files or the Excel data. So at this point, I'll stop sharing and I'll pass it back to Tom.
Thank you very much for that, Samuel. So I'm going to just touch on this point first. So as you can see, there's a statement here that says Naviate Zero empowers everyday designers with tools for informed decision making. Hopefully from you seeing the tool now that Paul showed and also how it integrates into LCA One-Click, it makes you realize that this solution is much more just for, again, a bit of software for one person on a team or having one license on a company. The idea of this is that you're able to get this across your team. Each of them can have the ability to improve their decision making through the choice of material that are used from project to project. I think the key bit is that with it having access to the LCA One-Click database, having that ability to bring all them EPD certifications through, you've got it all in one place. And the fact that you can do this while clicking on model elements, and you can of course assign that data and put the data embedded within each of the properties in Revit, really brings the power in regards to being able to use this bit of software really. So at the moment, we are offering free trials to Naviate Zero. So you should hopefully get a link coming through in a second just on this webinar. But what you can do is you can either scan this QR code, you can contact a member of the Symmetry team afterwards, but you can get access to this and basically you can trial this and see how this works with your current workflows. I would say this is very important for both sides, of course, for yourself, for trying a new approach, a new workflow to see how much improvement you can see off this from your current way of working, but also the fact that you're able to input and have your say on what you would expect from a solution in regards to reducing carbon emissions and comparing to sort of traditional ways of going on the likes of the MBS website and choosing materials and doing it that way. The fact you can do it whilst you're designing. So again, your feedback, you can put that all back to us and we can work with you to create a solution that will be necessary for the industry and help others in this space. So again, thank you all very much for joining today. It's really appreciated for your time. And of course, looking forward to hear from you in the future.